everybody. We are here with Andreas Matt, who is the director of Imaginary, which is a non-profit organization for communication of mathematics based in Berlin, in Germany, but operating worldwide. Andreas has a PhD in mathematics and machine learning and worked from 2007 until 2016 for Mathematics Forschung Institute in Oberwolfach, and then you are based, I believe, in Berlin, and he is the co-founder of Imaginary with Gern Martin Gruel, and you received a media award from the German Mathematical Society in 2013 for your results in communicating mathematics. Okay, Andreas, thank you for accepting to be our host in this conference. That's a great pleasure, because you are, in my opinion, one of the best experts in the world in mathematics, in mathematical communication. First of all, why did you start this job, which is not so common in my experience?
Yeah, hello, Roberto. Thank you for having me. I'm super happy to be here. Ciao, everybody. Greetings to Camerino and to everybody. Yeah, the why is always the interesting question. So I was doing my PhD in Innsbruck in Austria. I'm from Austria originally. And as a mathematician, I was working in reinforcement learning, one pillar of machine learning, which at that time, so this was, let's say, I think it's even started with the master thesis, so in the late 90s, early 20s, early 2000. And so this was not very common that mathematicians would work in AI. AI was in Austria not very known or established. So I found a very, very motivated professor who said, okay, let's dive into neural networks and let's do something together. And while doing this, I worked with some robots, small robots that I had programs, so they were learning agents. And in a way, I don't know, media got interested or schools got interested, and I started to give public lectures, just talking about what I'm doing in my PhD thesis. And this was a lot of fun, and it was interesting that it also helped me in my research. So it helped me to formulate questions or to understand it better or to get some cool new ideas, since learning is very related to humans all the time. So any idea would help. And at the end, I did a big exhibition it was called Humans versus Robots. This was in 2002. And this was my first exhibition. And this was like part of my research, part of my PhD work. And it was very successful. We went to a shopping center and made a 2 weeks exhibition and had 20,000 people there, a really, really big exhibition. And I didn't know that this existed, mathematics exhibitions, but it felt like this is like a side project. But at one point, they asked us to do another exhibition and another one. And part of my PhD thesis and my master thesis I did in Argentina. So I had the Argentinian soccer robot team invited to Austria. So we had an exhibition where humans played soccer, like this kind of robot soccer, and this was a lot of fun. And I didn't realize that this existed as a job, mathematics communication. But I realized that I enjoyed it, and I realized that it makes sense, and yeah, in a way it became bigger, and I don't know, more requests for exhibitions. And at one point, I was just doing my social. In Austria, we still have this social service. So I was doing my social service after my PhD in Pakistan. So I was there for almost 4 years. Also a little bit of connected to research, but also to human development collaboration. At one point, the Mathematische Forschungsinstitut Oberwolfach asked to do a traveling exhibition, or actually they were planning a mathematics museum. And I thought, wow, that sounds really nice. You have the research institute with all the mathematics research, and at the same time, you try to establish a museum. So I sent them my application, and then I was very lucky to start the work there. And then it made sense to do a traveling exhibition first before we do our own museum, and then somehow the whole Imaginary first project, and then we did a museum, and then this organization started. But it was this kind of step-by-step thing, one step of the other. So even now we don't know where it's going. It's constantly in development.
Okay. But what is imaginary? Because maybe people can go on the website of imaginary.com, but it's difficult to describe what this enterprise is now.
Yeah, it's also we are also always, when somebody asks us, it's not so easy, because we are not an agency. Some people would say, okay, this is like an agency and we do mathematics exhibitions, but we're also not a museum because we don't have our own museum. But in a way, we feel more like a museum. I would say it's an academic approach towards high quality mathematics communication, but it's an academic approach. So we come from the academic world, and we really care about the content, and we care about the quality, and we also have, I think, we do everything openly licensed, for example, and that's something that comes from the academic world. So you have the open science movement. Why shouldn't we do it open science communication? And there are a lot of things, I don't know, we like the Ubuntu, we like LaTeX. There are things that in the normal, let's say, exhibition creators world, they don't have this academic approach. They would work with, of course, they would work with academia or have researchers collaborating, but we are we come from the research side. The whole team has this academic background, and it's interesting because we had to learn to work in a non-academic field, because we are now we are an independent. It's a non-profit, but we're independent, so we have to take care about the funding, and we have to take care about the time, which is something that academia doesn't have to. You just work and read as long as you want, or go to conferences and write a paper. This is something that's very difficult in the profit, but even if it's non-profit, you have budget and you have time, and that's tricky. So in a way, we are from academia, and we learn to be professional, and the core idea is to collaborate and to try out new formats and to jointly discover what is mathematics, and of course through all types of formats and with a general public including. So I think we don't work in hierarchies. We usually don't have these target group specifications. So it's more like a creative participatory approach towards enjoying mathematics and doing mathematics. So in a way, communication should also be close to research in a way. So ideally, if you communicate mathematics, there should be a benefit, if possible, also for research. Maybe a tool that we develop can be used in research, or the exhibit that we do can also surprise an expert in that field, or bring in some new ideas. So that's the approach. We'll talk maybe about a few projects so you can see what we do exactly, but it's also the type of projects we do there that change over time.
Okay. And so one characteristic is this open source exhibitions. What are the main exhibition you prepared?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the very first exhibition we did, it was called Imaginary. So it was the name of an exhibition first, Imaginary Through the Eyes of Mathematics. Later, since we liked that name, it became also the name of the company, which is still for some people difficult because they still know the exhibition and not the non-profit. But so I think it was even the very, very first exhibition. It was mounted in Munich, in Germany. This was in late 2007. And some visitors came and they said, "Wow, these images are nice. Can I have them for school? Or can you sell them?" It's always these questions, can you sell them to me? And we thought, no, we don't. I mean, we have the file. We asked the authors so there were a lot of mathematicians collaborating. They generated these super nice images of whatever algebraic surfaces or differential geometry objects, minimal surfaces, super nice. And so we asked the authors. They said, yeah, for sure. And then we sent them the files so they could reprint them. And then there was one school, they just copied the image section of the exhibition and just put it on display and made a math art exhibition in school. And then more people asked. And I think this is also something like the academic approach. You say, of course, yes. Like somebody asked and it's possible. I have the file. Of course, I can give it to you. And then at one point, we asked the authors, would it be okay that we apply an open license? At that time, imagine 2007. This is like we even had a touch screen in our exhibition. There were like people didn't know what is a touch screen, so we had to explain them. And open licenses was also not at all common. So the common creative licenses, they existed, but nobody knew about them, and we also had to apply them, explain the people. But at one point, we just decided, let's make everything openly licensed, and we had the first fully copied exhibition. It was in the Russian Art Museum in Kiev. Super interesting. So this was in 2009. They copied the whole exhibition. They did like they translated everything, added some new things, took all our ideas and made a new version, and completely independent. This was really amazing. Completely independently. So we didn't have to there was no work on our side. We sent them all the files and they worked on it. And they invited me to come to the opening, but that was just an extra, and it was super nice. And then they whatever they did, they prepared a new version of one software, they put it back into the same system, so other people could also use that. And for us at that time, it was clear that this is a really, really nice concept, that you don't recreate things. You have them as a base, and people can just work on it, extend it. Sometimes it's just the translations, but very often it's a localization also in terms of context. If a museum takes it, they would add their own, all the experience they have in developing exhibits or in writing good texts, or rewriting the things or adapting them in their own language, or adding their own flavor. So it became a kind of we got a lot of new versions, and this was, I think, in 2011-12 we had this idea, let's make it an open source exhibition platform. So instead of us having the files locally somewhere in a whatever online cloud directory, let's make it a website where people can download things directly, so they don't have to ask us, and also upload their own things. And I think this was at that time it felt like, okay, but can this work? And this was maybe also the time where it's not, now you have platforms and it's more logical that you upload and download, but at that time it was still not common. And so we developed a platform. It took us 1-2 years, and we started it in 2013, and we put all our content there, and people could start to download things. And this was really the start. If I look at the statistics, how many exhibitions happened in each year. After 2013, we had, 60 or 80 exhibitions each year, which were open source exhibitions. So it's not our budget, it's not our time, but it's still an exhibition that that continues, and it was amazing because it's not only there are a lot of countries or regions joined the math communication world that usually are not part of it. So we had a lot of exhibitions in Latin America. There were a lot of exhibitions on the African continent. Whatever, the first ever math exhibition in Cape Verde, super nice exhibition in Senegal, in Democratic Republic of Congo, but also in Madagascar. So this was really amazing that a lot of people could reuse it, reproduce the things with their own means. So even if it's if they have a workshop, they can just redo it. A lot of exhibits that we did at that time this was maybe also a big advantage. They were quite simple to reproduce. So it's an image or a video that you can show, or it's a computer software that you can just put on a computer. And if you have a touch screen, it's fine, but it would also work with a mouse or the keyboard input. And I'm still wondering why not more people are just opening their exhibits. I mean, it's not a business field for us, let's say for us mathematicians or a lot of math communicators. It's not a business. Very often it's prepaid. That's how we work. So you have funding to fund the exhibition, and it's funding that is public funding very often. So if it's of course it's a foundation, but it could be a ministry or government or a European Union funding. So it should be open anyway because it's public funding, and then you would just build on it, and it just makes a lot of sense. I think now with the open science movement, which just also started quite recently, it will take another maybe 5-10 years until it reaches the science communication. So we have an open science communication movement. I'm seeing it. Some museums are putting the things openly licensed, and it's starting. So that would be nice. I think funding agencies would just have to put it in there. Whatever, if ever you do a project with us, it has to be openly licensed. That would also help. And I think I see this also starting slowly.
Yeah, that's an important movement. I agree. That's a really good trend, and it's improving in recent years. And the last exhibition you organized, you come back to artificial intelligence because one of them is I am AI. What is this exhibition? What are the contents of this exhibition?
Yeah, it's interesting. So usually, if you do a new exhibition, we try to have it as close as possible to current research. So this is also something that we like. So we learn a lot. So I give you an example. Now we're working on a new exhibition on quantum computing. So the idea is the new research mathematics on quantum computing. It's a new one. But that one for AI, we were thinking, okay, let's look at new research. I'm talking about 3 or 4 years back when we started working on it, 2019, 20, yeah. But then at one point we realized that everybody talks about AI and media, and it was still at that time already quite popular. It became more and more the years after, but there were a lot of basics missing. Like all the basics were missing. So, and even if people heard the term neural network, they would not know what it is, and they would not know mathematically what it is. And so at one point we decided, okay, we have to, like this exhibition, probably we will give some glimpses on current research, but the idea is to really cover the core concepts, the main basics of, like the main mathematics of machine learning, and to really show what is a neural networks. And the good point was that it's not complicated mathematics. Like at the same time, we were working on a climate crisis, like mathematical models for climate crisis mathematics. That's much more complicated in terms of, like, if you work with Navier-Stokes equations, and a neural network is just in terms of mathematics. It's not easy to do a proof, but to show how numbers go in and they're multiplied and they're added, and there's a simple function activation function, and then you have some numbers coming out. It's something that you can even teach in high school, and I think it's starting also that it enters in some German states. It's already part of the curriculum, for example. So the idea was to cover core concepts, and so we developed an exhibition together with a lot of collaborators. That's another thing that we usually do. An exhibition that covers these concepts. So we have, again, reinforcement learning, my own field. So we have a robot simulation where you see how a robot learns via feedback, for example, and you can, he runs around or it runs around in a maze, and you can change the maze. The idea is also, maybe just to, like, some of our main ideas for our exhibits always, this was from the very beginning. Maybe at the beginning it was more the luck that we did this way, but the idea was to do exhibits that are creative in a way that they allow you as a visitor to do something new. And that's, I sometimes say, an exhibit has to be open in a way that visitors can surprise the authors of the exhibit. So it should be rather a tool, not a finished thing. It should not be X options. It doesn't matter if it's X number high. It doesn't matter. But you I give you a painting tool. We started, like, I'm doing circles, but coming back to the very first exhibition, we did this ray tracer of algebraic surfaces, Surfer maybe. So this was one of our really exhibits that still now, it's so attractive. You have a polynomial equation, you change it, and you see the surface, the real surface of it, like the zero set. And it's so creative because you can just invent your own equation, and you create something. I give you a building, I give you a tool, I give you a sandbox. And I think we still have this idea that exhibits should be sandboxes. There should be tools, and then you create. And that's a bit like mathematics. It's a big sandbox. It's like it has, and you find new things. You surprise yourself and each others, and you put your identity in it. And maybe you solve something, or maybe you come up with a new question, or you ask yourself, and that's also. But so here again, in the coming back with the circle, that the AI exhibits, we also try to do sandboxes. So that you have one exhibit where you just play completely with your own neural network. You create it, you change it, you train yourself. I don't show you a final network. I show you maybe have one version which is trained, but you can train it yourself. You see the training data, you change it. And that's a little bit the approach of our exhibits, that it has this playfulness in it, and you can also destroy something. That's also what we observe very often, that people like to destroy things, like make the opposite. First We have one exhibit where you build a city. It's a different exhibit, mathematics of mobility. So you have to build a city, a good city for mobility. But what visitors or kids do first, they build the worst city of the world because it's fun, or they make the underwater world or full of industry or whatever. But that's also a way to learn, because then you see what's bad, and then you see how you improve it. And I think I think a sandbox is also a good word for it, because that's like my kids, if they play in the sand, that's where first you destroy, you do this, you build, and then you make tunnels, you mix it with water, whatever. But it's also this kind of haptic. Maybe that's something that we learned in the last years, that it's very good if you have not only touchscreen. I think at the beginning touchscreen was haptic and new, but now it's very common. So if you can also use your hands, that's even better, and to have fast feedback.
Okay. So
and exhibition with the concepts. But IMEI, again, it's an openly licensed exhibit. I think it has 13 exhibits, and it's very popular. So we have 2 copies. They're touring around. You can rent it for free. You can reproduce it on an open license or adapt it. So there's several museums that are also taking the exhibits. It's interesting nowadays. Maybe also interesting for us mathematicians, because it's a big topic. It's a lot of museums are now adding AI, temporal or even permanent exhibitions to their portfolio. Yeah. So the communication museum, they would have AI. A lot of museums. Now we are working with an industrial art museum, or not only the science museums are they have to, or they want to communicate AI. And I think for us mathematicians, it's important to show that at the end, my professor at that time in the late 90s, he said, why do they call it neural networks? It's just a family of functions. He was like, he was cool. And he said, it's simple, like, why do they always have to add some special names? These computer scientists call it AI and call it neural networks. Yeah, that's the IMEI exhibition. And what's interesting that now, because of COVID, we had to start the exhibition in a digital format first. So the idea, it was all planned, the opening. We had to cancel the opening, and the funding agency, the Carl Zeiss Foundation, they said, okay, we don't know how long it's going to take. Can you do something in between? We said, yeah, we might try to put this, since it's software-based exhibits, we might try to put them on the web in a different version. So we thought about what could be a digital exhibition be, and we set up a digital exhibition, like taking the exhibits that would work also on a web browser. And we try to mix it, so there's a comic, there's something where you build your whatever AI learning machine just with paper cups. So it's not only looking at the website, so it's mixing the formats. And we set up that exhibition. It was very, very successful, and that's interesting. Still now, we have a lot, and the numbers, like the visitor access numbers of this website, is going constantly up. So it's also im.ai, the website. And what's interesting now, we got another, like a successor project on electronic music and AI. I don't know if you saw this, Roberto. I can send you the link. So that's a new project, and it's the first interesting, because we love physical, real human contact. So we don't do web only projects usually, but this was a project where it was all about exploring even further this format of digital exhibition. So we set it all up as a digital exhibition. It's called Muski, so for music, and KI is the German AI. And so this is our first exhibition that first starts in a digital format, and now we have the ideas to do a physical copy of it. So we did one exhibition on mathematics and music, and already had some AI modules, and now we're trying to extend it. So that's also super interesting how Corona did not only open the whole field of digital workshops and online communication. So we're doing a lot of online workshops. I think we did 134-day-long online AI workshops. So really a lot. We had like 15 people working for months doing online workshops. This was with the Goethe Institute in many countries. Super interesting, but it also opened this way of doing digital, like putting the exhibits also in a web format, which helps the physical exhibition a lot, because people can play with the exhibits beforehand, they can play with the exhibits afterwards. The teachers can take the exhibits at home, they can easily show it in school. So I think nowadays, and if you do a physical exhibition, of course you have to have a whole ecosystem of a good web presence and further material for background material to take home and whatever. So that's interesting.
Okay, that's so clearly pandemic was special in the sense that probably changed the way people interact at the international level, because I remember that before pandemic it was difficult to organize online conferences, or then I joined your digital conference in Paris last year. You organized with Sylvie Benzoni. It was quite fun to interact with people online, even with this kind of special way, the random meeting you organize. You were one of the organizers of this meeting, and people interact for 2 minutes, something like that, and then you change it, and you had another person. So that's possible to organize with fun things and new things, a new way to interact. But you also joined for many years, for 7 years, so from 2015 to 2022, the Public Awareness Committee of the European Mathematical Society. Now the new name of this committee is Public Outreach and Engagement, and the new chair is Katie Chicot. And first of all, what's the way people can interact at the international level? Because usually communication and maths is made at the national level. It's very easy to communicate in the own proper language, and so that's difficult to interact at the international level. Okay, you can exchange, you can translate some contents. That's what you did in this kind of exhibition. But what's the reason to put people together, and how what's your impression? What's the best way to do that in the future? I mean, to do people working together, for instance, in common project.
Yeah. So I mean, for us at Imaginary, it was from the very beginning clear that we do work internationally. We even had problems calling the exhibition Imaginary and having it in English and German at the same time, because people in Germany said, why would you give your exhibition an English name, as an example, no? So but it was clear. I mean, we come from a scientific world. There is no borders there, you know. Of course, you work with everybody, and you join hands, and you share, and you collaborate. Point. So and it's logical. So it should be logical. There's no question about not working internationally. And of course, this concept of sharing knowledge, sharing experience, sharing tools, sharing what you discover, you know, that's part of scientific work and should be part of communication work. So for us, it was clear. And I think from the very beginning, we had several projects starting networks of math communication. We had a newsletter for many years, trying to just mapping things that are happening, you know, we set up a map of all the mathematics museums of the world, for example. We try to keep it updated, or just list all the exhibits, or in the committee, there was the idea also to have a directory of all the people working in the field. And we started the first conferences on mathematics communication. Of course, it's there are many ideas, and some things are maybe you would do it with a lot of motivation, but then at the end you realize it's a bit too early, or you don't have the funding, and then you stop it again, and then the crowd has to grow, and then they find their own networks. And I think, I mean, if you look at mathematics communication in the last 15 or 20 years, it's amazing what happened, you know. And it's at one point I had the feeling, okay, I think I have an overview of what's happening. It's just a feeling. You never have an overview. But I had the feeling, okay, I know more or less what's happening in each country, but just forget it. I mean, nowadays you have so many people coming in, and it's the whole field of science communication was booming, or is booming. And just to keep an overview of the mathematics museums of the world is already impossible. Imagine all the other formats, you know, have all these whatever from YouTube channels and talks, and it's really amazing. But even then, now there are like French networks and UK-based networks of math communications, and certain regions are starting their own ones. So language is still a very important thing of communication. No? So that makes it difficult, because even if we can speak in English or in French or in a big language, locally you would need the local language always. And that's super important. I remember when we collaborated in Slovenia with a local math communication organization, they did Slovenian translations, and it was super important to have the things translated.
Yeah.
So the EMS committee, I think they're super clever, always trying to find tools or ideas how to make that exchange easier. So there was this one project idea to have a calendar, an event calendar internationally, where people can just say what's happening in the field of mathematics communication, mathematics engagement, for the visitors. So if I want to know what's happening in Italy, for example, in terms of talks or exhibitions, but also for the professionals. So if there's an upcoming conference, I think nowadays we have 4 or 5 concurring mathematics communication conferences, not just one. And some are more regional, but some are international, some are on different continents. But there's a lot happening. And I think just to keep a little bit an overview, it's a project called PopMath, for Popular Mathematics, popmath.eu. And it's super nice, but it's still not known. And of course, for people, it's maybe work to add their own event there. It's still starting. Maybe it's a bit too early, but it's still. I think it's good to have these tools, and I'm sure that more and more of these tools will come, and then at one point, certain tools will just stay, and that's super important for us, for the whole field, because then it's not only that you know what's happening, it's also keeping also for research. And at one point, I spoke to some people. They did mathematics, history of mathematics communication. Super interesting. There was a German research project. They started in the late 80s, early 90s, 1900s, trying to find out what mathematics exhibition existed at that time. Super interesting. Huh? Then you also find out that I think mathematics exhibitions, they're very German, and giving talks about mathematics, for example, are more English or Italian. So you also have the different formats of who is doing what. And I think also for just to understand where do we come from, to learn from the past. A lot of, if you look at exhibits nowadays in museums, they all have a long history. It's not like you invent a new exhibit. The exhibits, they also grow. You have the same ideas, and then you build on them and develop them, and that's super important also to keep track of what's happening.
Yeah,
there's a new project coming up. Maybe just to mention about a new award for mathematics communicators. So that's also for all of you very interesting. It's still it's not publicly announced, but I think it's open to mention. So there will be an EMS based award for.
Andrea, thank you very much for your overview of your activity, which is impressive. And just one last question. Okay. Listening to you made math communication very easy, because for you it's quite natural, but still I think math communication is hard. Why is it hard, according to you? Because clearly it's difficult to do math communication. What's the most difficult thing in math communication?
Maybe I would need to think about it in detail, but maybe it's a bit connected to these prejudices that you have generally on mathematics, not only the communication, but also education, that you would say, okay, it's hard, that's why it's hard. Or I have to make it easy, and then it's difficult because you cannot make mathematics easy. Or I have to connect it to application, then it's difficult because many things don't have applications. And this is just nonsense. You don't have to, you can. We did this, it was very interesting. We had this pure mathematics, algebraic geometry, minimal surfaces exhibition. There was no application. I mean, you could try to invent an application, but it was all about the pure joy of connecting equations to images. And nobody asked about it except journalists. The journalists asked about what's the application, but the visitors enjoy it. For them, it's you can enjoy mathematics without applications. And then so maybe and the same, like we put a lot of equations in our exhibitions, and people would say, no, but this is like equations are like, people would run away. No, it is like, be authentic. Mathematics is complex. There are equations, or there is formalism. Show it, but try to transmit the joy that you have, or the creativity behind it, or that that it's also this, like in my work doing mathematics communication, a lot of people would always say, yeah, this kind of in school it's like right or wrong, and if I don't understand, it's bad. But then if you do research mathematics, or if you go into the mathematics world, you realize that nobody understands. Not understanding is nice. Not understanding, opens up your brain. It can be joyful not to not understand, and this kind of, it's not bad at all. It's like a joint. Then I ask you, it's like a joint discovery, and this is something that you can also transmit in an exhibition, And even I don't understand the full scope of my exhibitions, of our exhibitions, because it's too much, But I can still enjoy it, and I can discover it, and I can ask questions, and we can jointly go on a journey to it. And I think if you approach it more as a journey, don't think too much. Do what you like and try. And that's what we do a lot. You try, and then, but be close with the audience. Try, and if it doesn't work, listen to the people, change it, and I think this is what works. So look at it more as a collaboration tool, and not to present your ego or present your work. It's like more a journey. And I think that's
okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Andreas. So I hope we will hear from new projects next year. Anyway, we are going to everybody to participate to the International Day of Mathematics. You are one of the main organizers, so we can say it. But and the theme of this next edition is games, mathematics, and games. I hope you will present a new project next year, and we are waiting for them.
Actually, the theme is playing with mathematics, so it's also the mathematics of games, but it's also this kind of what I just said, that you play with mathematics. You use, experiment, and discover with mathematics. So it's the two sides of it. It's the
okay.
So let's play further with mathematics.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can stop here, and thank you very much again to join us for this conference, and goodbye.
Thank you. Enjoy. See you. Bye-bye.